Welcome to Scripture Chill. We are so glad you joined us for this session. Today, we're digging into a topic that's just dripping with mystery, intrigue, and a healthy dose of conspiracy, the so-called lost books of the Bible. These are the texts that, for one reason or another, didn't make the final cut, leaving so many of us wondering, what secrets are they holding? All right, so let's just jump right in with the big one. The question that really gets people talking, were these texts intentionally buried? Was there some kind of massive cover-up to hide uncomfortable truths about Jesus in the early days of the church? It's a really compelling idea for sure, but we're here to see what history actually has to say about it. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the mystery itself, then we'll look at some specific gospels that didn't make it, and some of these are wild. We'll even talk about scriptures that have completely vanished. After that, we'll unpack how the Bible was actually put together, and you might be surprised to find out just how much these lost books still influence us today.
All right, first things first, let's tackle the biggest myth head-on. Is this a story about some shadowy conspiracy, or is it more of a complicated historical process?
You know, a lot of folks, and you can't blame them after stuff like the Da Vinci Code, think that Emperor Constantine just showed up one day, gathered a bunch of guys in a room, and decided which books were in and which were out to cement his own power. But historians tell us the reality is, a whole lot more boring. It was actually a slow, complex, centuries-long process of debate and discussion that started way before Constantine was even on the scene.
And this right here, this is really the key to understanding the whole thing. In the first few centuries, there wasn't just one Christianity. It was this incredibly diverse landscape of what scholars call competing Christianities. You had all these different groups with their own beliefs, and naturally, they all had their own sacred texts that reflected those beliefs.
Okay, so let's get into some of the juicy stuff. Let's look at a few of these fascinating and sometimes pretty strange texts that were a big deal in some communities, but, ultimately didn't get included in the New Testaments.
So was he a holy child or a holy terror? This question is at the heart of one of the most famous non-canonical books out there, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. I mean, people were naturally curious about Jesus' childhood, right? The Bible's pretty quiet about those years. Well, this text tries to fill in those gaps.
And wow, this really shows you just how different, how wild some of these other texts were. The Jesus in this book is not the calm, serene figure you might be picturing. He's a kid with this immense, untamed power. In one really shocking story, another boy accidentally bumps into him, and Jesus gets angry and curses him, and the kid just withers and dies right there. It's this picture of a volatile, almost frightening child God that's just worlds away from the image we get in the four Gospels we know.
Then there's the whole mystery of the secret Gospel of Mark. Back in 1958, a scholar claimed he found a letter that quoted a longer, more mystical version of the Gospel of Mark. But ever since, experts have been locked in this debate. Is it a real ancient text that gives us a deeper look, or is it just a really clever modern forgery? The jury is still very much out on that one.
Here's another one of those big questions early Christians had. What exactly was Jesus doing for those 3 days between his death and resurrection? The main Gospels don't really say much, but another text, the Gospel of Nicodemus, dives right in with a super vivid, detailed story.
And this text gives us a concept that became huge in Christian thought, the Harrowing of Hell. The story goes that after he died, Christ went down into Hades, busted down the gates, and rescued the souls of all the righteous people. Think Adam, the prophets, all those folks who had died before he came.
But check this out. This is where it gets really interesting. When you look at the actual manuscripts, you can see the story literally changing over time. The earliest version we have talks about a universal salvation. Jesus frees everyone, even the guilty, wicked, and unrighteous. But in later copies, you can see that scribes actually altered the text. Now it describes a selective rescue, where Jesus saves only the saints and throws others into an even deeper part of hell. It's an amazing example of theology evolving by, just rewriting the story.
Okay, so we've been talking about books that we can actually read, but what about the ones that are totally gone? These are books we only know existed because they get a quick mention in the books that did make it.
These are just a handful of examples of scriptures that have just vanished. All we have are these tantalizing little clues that they once existed, but the books themselves are lost to the sands of time.
Take the real 1 Corinthians, for instance. In the letter we have in our Bibles today, Paul straight up says, "I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people." See? He's referring to a previous letter that we just don't have. From the context, it probably had a lot to say about community, discipline, and morality, but we can only guess what was really in it.
So this leads us to the million-dollar question. How did they decide? Why did some books get in while others were left on the cutting room floor? The answer is a process of curation, not some grand conspiracy.
It wasn't random. The early church leaders actually had a kind of checklist, a set of criteria they used. First, was it ancient? Did it go back to the time of Jesus and the apostles? Second, was it apostolic? Was it written by an apostle or someone close to them? Third, was it Catholic? And that's with a small c, meaning was it universally accepted and read in churches everywhere? And finally, was it orthodox?
And this was the big one. As the scholar Bart Ehrman points out, orthodoxy was basically the trump card. Did the book's theology line up with what the main church communities already believed about God and Jesus? A text like the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, with its vengeful, power-tripping child Jesus, that just didn't fit. So it was out.
But here's the final twist in the story. Just because these books didn't make it into the Bible doesn't mean they just vanished. Nope. Their influence is still with us today in some pretty surprising ways. Think about it. That Harrowing of Hell idea? It became a massive theme in medieval art and thinking, and it even inspired the line, "He descended into hell," that you find in the Apostles' Creed. And get this, some of those stories from the Infancy Gospels, like Jesus making little birds out of clay and bringing them to life, you can find very similar stories popping up centuries later in the Quran.
So what's the big takeaway here? Why should we care about these lost books? Well, they're not really evidence of a cover-up. What they are is a window into the messy, creative, vibrant, and sometimes strange world of early Christianity. They show us all the different ways people were trying to make sense of who Jesus was.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating question to chew on. Are these texts just pious imagination, kind of like ancient fanfiction written to fill in the gaps? Or do they hold echoes of real, alternative histories of Christianity? Histories that were just pushed aside. It's a debate that is still very much alive.
Let's get these conversations started. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you're the first to know when the next episode drops. This has been Scripture Chill. Stay curious, stay chilled, peace, and God bless.